There is a territory within you that maps onto the very architecture of the cosmos, a vast and uncharted interior where the light of your conscious mind does not readily reach. It is a land of whispers and echoes, of forgotten memories and disowned desires, a silent partner in every decision you make and every relationship you forge. This is the domain of the shadow self, not a monster in the closet of your soul, but a profound and necessary spirit you were always meant to befriend. To speak of the shadow is to speak of the hidden half of existence itself, the dark matter that holds the galaxies of our personality together, the unseen roots from which the visible tree of our character draws its strength and sustenance. We spend our lives curating a persona, a portrait of who we wish to be, polished by the expectations of society and the aspirations of our own ideals. Yet, for every brushstroke of light we apply to this canvas, a corresponding shade is cast behind, falling away into the depths of our unconscious. This is not a flaw in our design, but its most ingenious feature. Imagine yourself standing in the bright noon sun. Your body casts a long, dark silhouette upon the ground, a shape that mimics your form but is devoid of your color, your detail, your perceived substance. You cannot sever this shadow from yourself, no matter how you twist or turn. It is an intrinsic part of your being in the light. To deny its existence is to deny the very fact that you stand here, whole. Our psychological shadow operates on this same immutable principle. It is the composite of all that we are, but that we, for a multitude of reasons, have chosen not to see, not to claim, not to integrate. It contains the latent capacities for rage and jealousy we disown in our quest to be kind, the vulnerabilities and fears we bury beneath a facade of strength, the primal creativity and wild intuition we suppress in favor of rational order. It is the repository of everything we have ever been told was unacceptable, ugly, or shameful. We are taught from a young age to fear the dark, to turn on a light, to banish the unknown corners of our own homes. We apply this same terrified logic to the inner world, treating the shadow as a hostile intruder, a flaw to be excised, a demon to be vanquished. We project its contents onto the world around us, seeing in others the very qualities we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves, thus weaving a web of conflict and misunderstanding that stretches from our most intimate relationships to the global stage. But what if this darkness is not our enemy? What if this spirit, this shadow, is in fact the most loyal of guardians, holding not our damnation, but our key to a more complete, authentic, and empowered existence? To befriend the shadow is to embark on the quintessential hero's journey inward, to venture into the cave where the treasure you fear is also the treasure you seek. It is an act of profound courage that requires laying down the weapons of self-judgment and picking up the lantern of curious compassion. This is not a path of adding something new to yourself, but of reclaiming the wholeness that was always your birthright. It is the process of gathering up the scattered fragments of your soul and realizing that the mosaic, when assembled, is far more magnificent and complex than the curated portrait you once presented to the world. This journey of befriending is the central work of a life truly lived, not a superficial self-improvement project, but a deep cosmic realignment. It is about making peace with the entirety of your being, and in doing so, recognizing that the shadow is not a spirit of malice, but a spirit of immense potential, waiting patiently in the wings for an invitation to the stage of your life. It holds your untapped power, your silenced voice, your repressed joy. To ignore it is to live a half-life. To engage with it is to step into the fullness of your destiny. This is the invitation to turn and face the silhouette, not as an adversary, but as the long-lost keeper of your missing pieces. To understand the shadow is to decipher a silent language spoken in the echoes of our reactions and the patterns of our attractions and aversions. The core themes of this inner landscape are not a checklist of traits, but a dynamic interplay of forces, a dance between the seen and the unseen that defines the human experience. At its heart lies the fundamental concept of wholeness versus fragmentation. We are not by nature meant to be divided beings. Our original state is one of integrated completeness, where every potential, every emotion, every impulse has its place and purpose within the harmonious ecosystem of the self. Yet, the process of socialization, of becoming a person within a family, a culture, and a society necessitates a kind of psychic surgery. To gain love, approval, and a sense of belonging, we learn to amplify certain qualities, kindness, obedience, cheerfulness, and to hide away others, selfishness, anger, sorrow. These disowned parts do not vanish. They are merely relegated to the basement of the unconscious, where they gather energy and influence our lives from the shadows. The drive toward wholeness is a spiritual imperative, an innate yearning to become entire again, to reclaim the fragments we left behind in the rush to belong. This is the first great theme. The shadow is not our corruption, but our exiled wholeness yearning to return home. A second, and perhaps the most immediate theme, is the powerful mechanism of projection. This is the unconscious act of expelling these disowned qualities from our inner world and attributing them to the outer world, to other people, groups, or situations. It is as if we walk through life carrying a hidden film reel of our own unconscious content, which we then project onto the blank screen of other people's behavior. When we feel an instantaneous, irrational, and intense dislike for someone, a coworker's arrogance, a stranger's vanity, a politician's greed, we are often seeing a reflected fragment of our own psyche. The very vehemence of our reaction is a clue, a signal flare pointing directly to a shadow aspect. The same mechanism operates in positive projection, where we idolize or fall in love with someone because they embody a greatness or a talent we have not yet claimed for ourselves. Projection is the shadow's primary method of communication. It knocks on the door of our awareness through our intense emotional responses to the outside world. To withdraw these projections, to say, "This quality that I see so clearly in you is also, in some measure, alive in me," is one of the most courageous and liberating acts of self-discovery. It transforms our outer world from a battlefield of perceived threats into a mirror of profound self-revelation. Intertwined with projection is the theme of the ego and its necessary humiliation. The ego, in its healthy function, is the captain of the ship of consciousness, the organizer of our identity and our daily life. But it often mistakes itself for the entire fleet, believing it has sole authority and complete awareness. It builds a fortress of identity around the persona, the mask of who we think we are and who we wish to be seen as. The shadow represents everything that contradicts this polished self-image. To acknowledge the shadow is, therefore, to humble the ego. It is to force the captain to admit he does not know the depths of his own ship, that there are entire decks and cargo holds operating outside his command. This is not a destruction of the ego, but a vital expansion of its perspective. the ego is dethroned from its tyrannical isolation and reinstated as a valuable partner in a much larger government of the self, a government that includes the wisdom of the unconscious. This humbling is the gateway to true humility, which is not thinking less of oneself, but thinking of oneself less, as the ego finally makes room for the vast, mysterious, and powerful totality of the being it serves. Finally, underlying all of this is the theme of the shadow as the seat of vital power and creativity. The qualities we lock away in the shadow are not merely neutral, they're charged with immense psychic energy. By repressing our anger, we lose access to our healthy boundaries and our capacity for righteous action. By burying our grief, we dam the wellspring of our deepest compassion. By denying our primal instincts, we sever our connection to the raw, creative life force that animates the world. The shadow is not a graveyard for dead parts of the self, but a prison for live wires of immense potential. To befriend the shadow is to tap into this forbidden power grid, to reclaim the energy we have spent a lifetime suppressing. The fierce protectiveness of a mother, the unwavering focus of an artist, the transformative fire of a revolutionary. These are not born from the placid persona, but from the integration of powerful shadow elements. The shadow holds the gold in the dark, the unexpressed genius, the wild and untamed spirit that gives life its passion, depth, and authentic meaning. It is the source of our libido, our life force, waiting not to be tamed, but to be understood and harnessed in the service of our highest purpose. To speak of the shadow in mere psychological terms is to tell only half the story, for its roots tap into the oldest layers of human understanding, into the symbolic and mythological language of the soul. These deeper narratives are the ancient archetypal maps that guide us through this interior wilderness, revealing that the journey to befriend our darkness is a timeless, universal drama. One of the most potent of these narratives is the alchemical process of nigredo, the blackening. In the quest to create the philosopher's stone, the alchemists did not begin with gold. They began with the prima materia, a base, chaotic, and often despised substance. This material was subjected to heat and pressure, breaking it down into a uniform black mass. This stage was not a failure, but a necessary first step. The putrefactio, the decomposition of the old, rigid forms to release the essential spirit within. Our shadow work is this very nigredo. It's the courageous descent into the blackness, the willing confrontation with the parts of ourselves we consider base, chaotic, and shameful. It is the rotting away of the pristine but false persona, a dissolution that feels like a kind of death, but is in fact the only fertile ground from which true, lasting transformation can grow. The blackness is not an absence of light, but the womb of all potential. Another profound symbolic narrative is found in the ancient Sumerian myth of Inanna's descent into the underworld. The Queen of Heaven and Earth, adorned with all the symbols of her power and prestige, must pass through 7 gates to enter the realm of her dark sister, Ereshkigal. At each gate, a part of her regalia, her crown, her jewels, her robes, is stripped away until she stands naked and bowed low before the throne of the underworld, where she is killed and hung upon a hook. This is a perfect allegory for the ego's journey into the shadow. We too must willingly descend, and at each stage of deeper awareness, another layer of our persona, our titles, our constructed identity, is removed. We are stripped bare of our defenses and brought low, facing not a monster, but our own most raw and essential nature, the often terrifying life and death power of the unconscious, symbolized by a Ereshkigal. Resurrection and return are only possible after this utter humiliation and acknowledgement of the shadow's power. We return, not as we were, but integrated, having reclaimed the wisdom of the depths, our power now authentic, because it includes an understanding of its opposite. The rich tapestry of Eastern philosophy offers the sublime symbol of the net of Indra. Imagine a vast cosmic net stretching infinitely in all directions. At each junction of the net rests a multifaceted jewel, and each jewel perfectly reflects every other jewel in the entire net. In this vision of reality, every entity is intimately interconnected with and contains the essence of all others. Apply this to the self. Your conscious identity is one jewel, and your shadow is not a separate entity, but the collection of all the reflections within you that you have refused to see. It contains the thief and the saint, the coward and the hero, the fool and the sage. To befriend the shadow is to polish the surface of your own jewel, to clear away the dust of denial so that you can see these reflections clearly, acknowledge them as part of your own structure, and thus perceive your true place in the interconnected whole. It is the realization that by denying any part of the human experience within yourself, you are in effect denying a part of the cosmos itself and fracturing your own connection to the divine net. Finally, we find a powerful narrative in the Christian tradition, often overlooked, the story of the harrowing of hell. Between his crucifixion and resurrection, Christ is said to have descended into hell, not to be punished, but to liberate the righteous souls who had been trapped there since the beginning of time. This is a profound metaphor for the conscious engagement with the shadow. Our personal hell is the unconscious, where we have trapped all the aspects of ourselves we deemed unworthy of heaven or of our own light. The conscious ego, guided by a higher principle of love and compassion, the symbolic Christ, must make this descent. It enters the hell of its own making, not to suffer, but to shine a light into the darkness and liberate these captive souls, these disowned talents, emotions, and potentials. It is an act of ultimate salvation, but it is self-salvation. The resurrection that follows is a rebirth into a life no longer plagued by the hidden torments of the underworld, because those energies have been brought up into the light, redeemed and integrated into a new, more holy and whole self. The real-world implications of this practice are nothing short of revolutionary for our relationships. As we withdraw our projections, we cease to demand that others carry the burden of our disowned qualities. We stop seeking partners who perfectly complement our persona, and instead seek wholeness within ourselves, which allows us to engage in relationships from a place of fullness rather than need. A disagreement with a partner ceases to be a battle between right and wrong, and transforms into a shared exploration of triggered wounds and unconscious patterns. We become less interested in being right and more interested in being real, less focused on changing the other and more committed to understanding the reflection they provide. This creates a profound space for authenticity and deep intimacy, as the relationship is no longer a stage for performing our ideal selves, but a sacred container where both individuals can be truly, fully human, shadows and all. In the wider world, This integration fosters a radical empathy that transcends tribal boundaries. When you recognize the potential for darkness and light within yourself, you can no longer so easily vilify the other. Whether that other is a political opponent, a different culture, or a rival corporation, you begin to understand that the cruelty, the greed, the fear you see playing out on the world stage are not the sole property of monstrous individuals, but are amplified reflections of the very human potentials that exist within the human psyche, within your own psyche. This does not lead to passivity or moral relativism, but to a more compassionate and clear-eyed activism. Your energy shifts from fighting an external enemy to addressing the unconscious patterns within the collective human soul, starting with your own. You work for change, not from a place of hatred for what is outside, but from a love for the potential wholeness within all people. This is how shadow work becomes a quiet but potent act of social and global healing, one acknowledged projection at a time. And so, we arrive at the culmination, not as an end, but as a point of departure, a threshold between understanding and being. This entire exploration, from the first acknowledgement of the silhouette to the practical application in the hum of daily life, converges upon a single transformative truth. The path to the light is through the darkness. To befriend your shadow is to cease a civil war within your own soul, to lay down the arms of self-rejection and extend the hand of compassionate curiosity to the most misunderstood aspects of your being. This is the ultimate act of self-love, not a narcissistic preening of the persona, but a courageous embrace of the totality of who you are. It is the recognition that your wholeness is your holiness, and that your imperfections are not blemishes to be erased, but the unique and intricate markings of your individual journey through existence. You are not a project to be perfected, but a universe to be explored, and the shadow holds the maps to your most uncharted and valuable territories. This transformational call is an invitation to shift your entire orientation toward yourself and the world. It is a call to move from judgment to curiosity, from fear to engagement, from fragmentation to integration. The world does not need more people who have perfectly polished personas. It needs more people who have made peace with their own darkness, for only such individuals can truly radiate a light that is authentic, resilient, and compassionate. This is the higher dimension of being we are called to ascend to. Not an escape from humanity, but a full-bodied embrace of it. It is a state of consciousness where you can hold your own contradictions without collapsing into crisis, where you can witness the pain and beauty of the world without being shattered by it, because you have learned to hold that same pain and beauty within the spaciousness of your own accepted self. The journey of befriending is lifelong, for the shadow is not a static entity to be conquered and catalogued, but a dynamic, living aspect of your psyche that evolves as you do. Each new stage of life, each new challenge, will reveal new layers, new pockets of disowned energy waiting to be reclaimed. This is not a burden, but the great adventure of a conscious life. Let your relationships be your sanctuary for this work, your mirror and your solace. Let your creative pursuits be your alchemy, transforming raw shadow material into art, music, writing, and innovation. Let your moments of quiet contemplation be your daily descent, a gentle checking in with the parts of you that ask only for acknowledgement. You were never meant to walk in the light alone. dragging a buried darkness behind you. You are meant to turn, to face it, to greet it not as a stranger, but as a long-lost part of your own spirit. And in that meeting, in that courageous act of befriending, you will find that the very darkness you feared was all along the missing key to your complete and radiant freedom. As you walk away from this message, remember that the light you seek has always been waiting in the depths of your own shadow. To embrace it is to reclaim your hidden wholeness and step into the radiance of your true being. If this journey spoke to your spirit, help us carry this light further. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so we can continue exploring these mysteries together. Share your reflections in the comments, for your voice may be the spark another seeker needs. The path is not walked alone. It unfolds as we share it. Thank you for watching.